They slid the contract across the table with a smile so fake it could have been printed on. Take the 1%, Liam. It's more than you deserve. That was the moment I realized something was wrong, very wrong. I'm Liam Carter, 27, software engineer, compulsive builder, and gullible enough to believe that loyalty still meant something in business. For 3 years, I'd been the technical backbone of CoreLink Solutions, a scrappy AI startup I'd co-founded with Evan Hale, my former mentor turned business partner. Turned something I didn't recognize anymore. Evan was the opposite of me. Slick, charismatic, always talking fast, always promising faster. He knew how to work a room the way I knew how to work a codebase. He handled the investors. I handled the product. It was a perfect balance. Until it wasn't. When we started, we'd agreed, 50-50ths. Partners. But verbal agreements mean nothing when signatures start being worth millions. The meeting was supposed to be routine, a coffee meet-up to finalize our formal incorporation paperwork. That morning, the cafe was loud, crowded, and warm. The kind of place that should have felt cozy. Instead, my skin prickled like someone had opened a door behind me. Evan looked too calm. Too practiced. He tapped the contract with one manicured fingertip. Come on, man, he said, shrugging like he was offering me a favor. You're the tech guy. This is standard. I'll handle the business stuff. You just keep building. His smile widened. 1% is symbolic. You're part of the founding story. Symbolic. 1%. Of the company I had written every line of code for. I remember blinking at him, half expecting him to laugh, say it was a joke, say the real contract was coming. But he just watched me, eyes sharp in a way I'd never seen. Like a predator waiting for its prey to accept the inevitable. We talked about this, I said slowly. We agreed. He waved a hand. You weren't thinking realistically back then. Investors don't want a nerd with equal control. It scares them. I'm trying to protect you. Protect me. I looked down at the contract again. My name was there. My contribution. Technical assistance, it said. Like I'd been some freelancer who fixed a couple bugs. My voice came out quieter than I meant. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Evan didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence told me everything. For the first time since we'd started the company, I felt a thin, cold thread of distrust coil in my stomach. A whisper I couldn't shake. Something here wasn't just unfair. It was intentional. And I had no idea just how far Evan planned to take it. You said. People think betrayal happens in a single explosion. A fight, a confession, a dramatic reveal. But it doesn't. It starts as hairline cracks. Tiny. Quiet. Easy to excuse. After the 1% contract incident, I didn't sign anything. I told Evan I needed time. He pretended not to care, but something in his eyes tightened, like I'd just become a problem instead of a partner. The cracks showed up the very next week. At our office, a rented, sunless workspace on the 7th floor, Evan walked in with 2 investors I'd never met. They laughed at something he said before they even reached my desk. When he finally introduced me, it was quick, dismissive. This is Liam, he said. Our tech guy. Tech guy. Not co-founder. Not partner. The investors nodded politely, but I'd already felt the sting. I tried to shake it off, telling myself he'd misspoken. We were under pressure. He'd fix it next time. Except he didn't. Then came the phone calls. Evan started taking them in the hallway, voice hushed, pacing like a man making deals he didn't want overheard. When I stepped out once to ask him a question about our next sprint, he snapped. Dude, seriously? Can you give me 5 minutes? I apologized, even though I didn't know why I needed to. That was red flag number 2. Red flag number 3 hit harder. Hard enough to leave a bruise. I'd been tracking our burn rate like usual when I noticed a withdrawal, a large one, that had nothing to do with payroll or development costs. It was labeled executive expenses. We didn't have executives. We barely had furniture. I brought it up to Evan that afternoon. He didn't look surprised. Didn't even look up from his laptop. Oh, that. Investor dinner. Standard stuff. But I hesitated, doing the math in my head again. It was almost 3 grand. Yeah, well, investors like nice places. Chill. I opened my mouth to tell him he should have told me, but he was already typing again, shutting me out one keystroke at a time. By red flag number 4, the emotional strain was a constant pressure behind my ribs. Evan had started scheduling meetings without me, then telling me afterward that they weren't important or that I would have been bored. When features I'd built were praised, he took credit in front of others. When bugs appeared, normal early-stage bugs, he blamed me in front of the interns. Still, I kept telling myself, he's stressed. Startups are messy. He's not trying to push me out. But late one night, as I packed up my laptop, I saw Evan's office door slightly open. He was on another whispered call. Yeah, I know. But he's not going to be a problem much longer. My stomach dropped. He couldn't have meant me. He wouldn't. But for the first time, I wasn't sure. And that thin coil of distrust. It tightened, slowly, painfully, around my nerves. Betrayal doesn't announce itself. It seeps in, quiet, poisonous, until suddenly you can't breathe. For weeks I'd been pushing red flags to the back of my mind, stacking excuses like sandbags against a rising flood. But the night I discovered the truth, the whole dam collapsed. It started with an email I wasn't supposed to see. I'd come into the office early, 6:15 a.m., the city still grey and half asleep, to run a test on our new predictive modeling engine. Evan's door was ajar again, his monitors glowing in the dark like twin spotlights. A document sat open on the left screen, bright and bold. My name was highlighted. Automatically, my gut tightened. Before I could talk myself out of it, I stepped closer. Founder 1, Evan Hale, 88%. Founder 2, Marcus Hale, 11%. Contributor, Liam Carter, 1%. Marcus Hale, Evan's older brother. A real estate guy who'd never once set foot in the office. Someone who thought AI infrastructure meant Alexa towers. I scrolled. Below the allocation was a legal summary. My throat dried as I read. All intellectual property credited solely to Evan Hale and Marcus Hale. All proprietary code classified as executor-delivered assets. Contributor, Liam Carter, relinquishes all claims upon contract acceptance. Executor. Assets. Relinquish. This wasn't just a restructuring. He was stealing my company, and claiming I had never been a co-founder at all. The lines blurred as heat surged behind my eyes. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, loud enough to drown out the office hum. A folder on the desktop caught my attention. Investor_final. I opened it. Slide after slide framed Evan and Marcus as the visionary founding team. Evan's photo was there, confident, sharp, next to Marcus wearing a suit worth more than my car. My contributions were labeled as developer support from early technical contractors. Contractors. 3 years of building. 3 years of sleeping on office couches. 3 years of carrying Evan's dream on my back. And in their version of the story, I was a footnote. My stomach twisted. Grief. Rage. Disbelief. All knotted together. Just then, the office door clicked. I froze. Evan stepped in, coffee in hand, shirt unbuttoned at the collar like he'd had a long night, or a very good one. He saw me. Saw the open documents. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Not guilt. Annoyance. You weren't supposed to see that, he said, voice low. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Every word I'd trusted from him rewrote itself into a lie. He set his coffee down slowly, carefully, like he was trying not to spook me. Look, Liam, it's business. You're great at what you do, but founders, real founders, have to make hard decisions. Real founders. My hands shook. My pulse hammered. The betrayal was no longer a whisper. It was a blade. And as Evan stepped closer, rehearsed calm hiding whatever plan he had next, one thought began forming sharp and clear in the back of my mind. He thinks this is over. He thinks I'm already beaten. He had no idea what was coming. For a long moment, I just stood there, Frozen. Humiliated. A hollow, stunned version of myself. Evan waited, hands in his pockets, wearing that calm, polished expression he used on investors. The one that said I've already won. The one that made everyone trust him. Except now I knew what hid behind it. You should go home, he said quietly. Let me handle things from here. I'll make sure you get your 1% once everything settles. My 1%. Hearing him say it out loud, so casually, so confidently, was the shove that finally broke something inside me. I felt the hurt rise first. Hot, bitter, choking. The kind of pain that made my chest ache like someone had reached in and pulled something out. 3 years. 3 years of believing in him. 3 years of building his future. I swallowed hard. This was our company, I said. I barely recognized my own voice. Thin, cracked. You said we were partners. Evan sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. You're talented, Liam. But you don't understand business. You never did. I kept you safe from the hard parts. Safe. Like I was some child he was humoring. He turned away, gathering documents, already moving on. It's better this way. Cleaner. The investors agree. Something cold settled in my stomach. Investors. He'd already sold them his version of the story. There was no fixing this. No talking my way back into the truth. That's when the shift happened. Not a dramatic surge of adrenaline. No cinematic lightning strike. Just clarity. I was done begging for space in a story I helped build from scratch. My hurt didn't disappear, but it hardened, like molten metal cooling into something sharp, solid, unbreakable. My pulse steadied. My hands stopped shaking. Evan glanced back and froze when he saw my expression. You can't win this, he warned. Not angrily. Not even smugly. Just certain. That certainty was his mistake. I walked past him, ignoring the way his posture stiffened. As I reached for the door, a file caught my eye on the shelf, an old prototype notebook. The one from our first year. My handwriting filled every page. I remembered who actually built CoreLink. Who dreamed it first. Who had the vision before Evan ever gave it a name. He didn't own the idea. He didn't own my work. He didn't own me. Without a word, I took the notebook. He didn't stop me. He thought it was worthless. A relic. But to me, it suddenly felt like a blueprint. A reminder. Walking out of that office, anger no longer led me. Purpose did. Evan thought he'd reduced me to a footnote. He thought offering me 1% was the end of the story. But that was the moment I decided, quietly, absolutely, that I would build something bigger. Better. Mine. And one day, he would regret ever thinking I could be handled. Revenge isn't spontaneous. It's a project. A patient, calculated campaign built from tiny, undeniable facts. Not dramatic, just methodical. I copied every repo, every branch, every commit, and every build log to an encrypted drive. GIT history is stubbornly honest. Authorship metadata, timestamps, commit messages. My handwriting in code couldn't be rewritten without leaving fingerprints. I made multiple redundant copies and shoved one in a safety deposit box. If Evan tried to claim the code was his, the proof would be immutable. I pulled old emails, Slack logs, calendars, and my notebook, the prototype one Evan dismissed. The notebook held sketches and incremental designs with dates long before Evan's vision slides. I exported chat logs showing him praising my solutions in private, then publicly taking credit. I dug up receipts, my travel, my late-night food orders at the office, the couch I slept on. Small expenses, but they built a timeline. Interns, contractors, even a recruiter who'd helped us hire, people Evan had treated like extras, was suddenly essential. I met them quietly, over coffee, and asked for statements. Who wrote what, who made which calls, who showed up at 3 a.m. to debug a production crash. Most were reluctant, embarrassed to cross Evan. But once they saw the folder I carried, the commits, the emails, their faces changed. They wanted the truth out too. I traced the executive expenses, the investor dinners, and odd transfers into the Hale family accounts. Not to expose private life, just to show pattern. Evan positioning himself as sole decision-maker while routing company funds to his brother's shell entities. Money doesn't lie. It follows motives. I didn't bluster. I hired a lawyer who specialized in IP and founder disputes. We built a complaint draft, a timeline of contributions, and a demand letter that read like a dossier. Lawyers make paperwork heavy. Heavy things are hard to ignore. But I didn't stop at the courtroom. I set soft traps that made Evan comfortable, because arrogance is a weapon when you know how to use it. I kept talking to him in meetings, played small, let him parade that investor deck I'd seen, let him boast to people I knew. Every time he told the same lie, I added the recording, the email, the timestamp to the file. He believed he was untouchable. That belief made his next slips thicker and easier to catch. And while he strutted, I quietly spun up a parallel, a minimal, clean fork of our core product, only the features I'd built, hosted on a separate domain. Nothing flashy. A demonstration of ownership and competency if it ever needed to be shown to a judge, an investor, or the press. Evan still smiled for the cameras. Investors patted his back. Marcus took the meetings. They were so certain that the story had been sold, that the narrative belonged to them now. The map was finished. The pieces were in place. All I needed was the right trigger, a lawyer's letter, a whistleblower call, or a timed leak, that would turn this fragile, comfortable world of theirs into glass. And as I sat in my apartment that night, the folder on my lap humming with evidence, I felt a new kind of calm. Revenge stopped being about hurting him. It became about restoring truth, and when it started, there would be no turning back. Revenge doesn't arrive with a whisper. It arrives with a rupture. The trigger came on a Thursday morning, 9:04 a.m., when CoreLink's quarterly investor meeting went live on a public stream. Evan loved public presentations. Crowds gave him energy like sunlight. Marcus stood beside him in a tailored navy suit, grinning like he'd built a single line of code in his life. This, Evan announced, voice honey-smooth, is the official unveiling of our proprietary AI infrastructure, conceptualized and engineered by the Hale brothers. The lie was polished, practiced, rehearsed, and exactly what I needed. Because at 9:06 a.m., every investor, partner, advisor, journalist, and viewer received the same email. From me. Subject line: CoreLink's true founder. Proof inside. Inside was the entire dossier. A authorship logs. A code commits. A witness statements. A financial transfers to Hale-owned shells. A the final founder allocation document. A link to my fork of the product with full timestamps predating the Hale pitch deck. It wasn't slander. It wasn't accusation. It was fact, presented in order, clean, undeniable. But the real explosion was the final attachment. A pre-filed IP claim and injunction request with the state court, timestamped 9 a.m. for minutes before the meeting had gone live. Which meant everything Evan said afterward, every boast, every claim of ownership, was now on record as a violation of the injunction. The stream chat erupted first. Investors whispering in confusion. Some leaving. Some messaging furiously. Evan's smile faltered. Just a flicker, but enough. Marcus leaned in, whispering urgently. Evan's eyes darted off camera, then widened. Someone on the board asked, "Evan, what is this?" He tried to salvage it. "This is a misunderstanding. My former intern." Intern. He doubled down. Perfect. Because that was when the second detonation hit. The journalist from TechPulse, whom I had quietly sent early evidence to, stood up mid-meeting and spoke loud enough for the microphones. "Mr. Hale, do you deny that Mr. Carter authored 98.7% of CoreLink's codebase?" Silence. Stunned. Thick silence. Evan's jaw clenched. "This is a private meeting." "It's being live-streamed," she replied. The third explosion came from a direction Evan didn't expect. His lead investor, grey-haired and sharp-eyed, stepped forward. "We have verified the timestamps. Everything points to Carter as the true technical founder. Evan, did you falsify proprietary ownership?" That word, falsify, was a guillotine. Evan sputtered, but Marcus panicked first. "This is Liam's fault. He refused to sign." He tried to blackmail. I didn't need to interrupt. The board did. Security, someone commanded. Remove them both. Screaming. Chairs scraping. Cameras catching every second. Evan was dragged out of his own meeting, shouting my name like a curse. Marcus tripped trying to follow. And while investors descended into chaos, the court filing went public. The Hale brothers were now frozen from accessing or selling any of the IP they tried to steal. Corelink stock, still private but actively traded, plummeted. By sunset, the news cycle had its headline. The Hale brothers exposed. Real founder reveals massive fraud. And me. I stood on my apartment balcony, the city buzzing with the aftermath, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not triumph. Not gloating. Freedom. The revenge wasn't just satisfying. It was surgical. They offered me 1%. Now they owned 0. You said. Fallout spreads faster than fire. Within 48 hours of the Livestream implosion, every tech publication, every startup forum, every LinkedIn post with more than 6 followers had the same headline. The Hale brothers' empire collapses as true founder emerges. Corelink's board suspended Evan and Marcus immediately. Investors fled. Partners froze contracts. The brothers tried damage control, statements, PR firms, even a late-night live session where Evan blamed confusion and technical misunderstandings. But truth doesn't bend. Every timestamp, every message, every commit pointed one direction. My direction. Legally, the court sided with me. My injunction stood. A full audit began, an audit that revealed more than just IP theft. Misallocated funds. Misreported revenues. Side deals. Marcus's shell companies siphoning money like a slow bleed. Their empire wasn't just cracking. It was collapsing. Within a week, Corelink issued a public apology naming me as the sole technical creator of the product. Investors reached out privately, some apologetic, some opportunistic. The board asked me to return. They offered titles. Equity. Control. I said no. Freedom isn't something you negotiate back. It's something you take and guard. Instead, I launched my own company, Lyra Systems, built on the fork I'd been quietly refining. Not in opposition to Corelink, but beyond it. Cleaner. Faster. Smarter. Investors who once barely remembered my name suddenly wanted meetings. Some of the interns I'd met for coffee asked if they could join. My lawyer laughed when she read my inbox. The best part. Evan and Marcus could do nothing to stop me. Legally, they couldn't touch a line of the product. Financially, they were tied up in investigations. Reputationally, they were radioactive. But poetic justice didn't come from their downfall. It came the day Lyra Systems officially launched. Reporters asked the same question over and over. How does it feel knowing they offered you just 1%? And I answered the same way every time. I didn't need their 1%. I built something worth 100 times more. But the real justice, the one that still gives me goosebumps, came 3 months later. At a conference where I was invited to speak as a founder, I walked past Evan in the lobby. No cameras. No crowd. Just 2 former partners crossing paths. He looked smaller. Tired. Like someone who'd finally realized the story he tried to steal had never belonged to him. He didn't say a word. And he didn't have to. Because the man who once told me I didn't understand business now had nothing to stand on. And I had built something too big for him to even touch. They offered me 1%. So I built my own 100%. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, written out of your own story, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your version. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your comeback might be the next one I write.